Hello guys, welcome to today's tutorial. I'm going to explain typecasting in C#. In programming, typecasting is the process of converting one data type to another. In C#, typecasting allows you to convert a value of one data type into another. For example, from integer to double or from string to integer. This is useful when you need to perform operations on incompatible data types or when working with methods that require specific data types, so you need to convert one type to another. There are some types of typecasting in C#. C# supports two types of casting. The first one is implicit casting, the second one is explicit casting. The implicit casting, this is done automatically by the compiler, by the C# compiler, and then does not require any specific coding coming from you. It occurs when there is no risk of data loss, typically converting from one smaller type to a large type, for example from integer to a float or to a double. And implicit casting is done automatically by the C# compiler, so you need to worry about and to writing any code. It's safe and does not require any specific coding. This conversion is performed without the programmer's intention. That means that we don't need to type anything. It happens automatically by the C# compiler. For example, let's convert an integer to a double number. Let's call this one number and 10. And if let's call this one double number is equal to number, right? So the difference is that now when we write all the data, first num and double num, and when we run our program, we get the same values. What is the difference? Let's call size of operator integer and double. When we run the program, right now, the difference is that now we are converting an integer to a double number. This means that it's going to hold more megabyte. So the first one holds 4 megabyte, integer holds 4 megabyte in the memory, and the double holds 8 megabyte in the memory. So converting from integer to double is not so meaningful. But there are some cases we need to in explicit casting is needed when you need to convert to a large number into a smaller type, or when converting between incompatible types. So when you do this, you need to use an operator to convert this one, and you need to write a specific code for this. Let's write a double. Let's call this num2 and give a double number, for example this one, and you can convert this number into integer by just doing int and num2. So the only thing you should do is just in the parentheses you should write the what type of casting you should do. We are going to transform double to integer, so I'm writing in parentheses integer. So the number 2, this number 8,32 will be converted into an integer. So but we will lose data. Let's show this. And This is our original number, right? This is the double number. So when we run our code, as you can see, the first one, num2, is 8.32, but the second one is casted to an integer and it loses some of its data. So, but sometimes you need to do this. So when you calculate something and you need an integer number instead of double, for example, when you divide a number to another one, and you need to continue your mathematical operation with an integer value, so you can cast one type to another, but you cannot do this one. For example, let's go to our first example. Now as you can see, it gives error because you cannot implicitly convert one type double number into an integer number, because you need to show the compilable intention first of all. In implicit casting, if the size of the one type is smaller than the type you want to cast to, it's safe. For example, from integer to double, you can implicit casting can do casting, so you will not lose any data, and but you will use more storage in your memory. But in the second example, this is not going to happen, because there is another way also. We can do also, third way is type conversion methods. There are some methods in C# that we can use when we want to convert one type to another. From between numbers, when we want to convert to one type to another, for example from integer to double or to double to integer, we can use explicit and implicit casting, and it will lose our problem. It will be very safe. But when we want to transform, for example, a string value, for example, let's in the double quotes, let's write a number, right? The compiler will understand this one as a string, not a number, but we want to convert this one into a number. How can we do that? There are two ways. There is convert class inside this one to int32 operator. This will convert the specific value into 32-byte integer. To change the name, let's give the same num is already defined, so we need to give another, right? Let's call this one num conversion. Okay, so for example, let's try to add to this number and the print out. As you can see, we get the total number because it is converted to an integer safely. And the third method is we can use parsing. We can parse strings to numerical types like integer. String, let's call this string number. This is the name of our variable, and let's give this one another value, right, like this. And we can transform this one to a number. Let's call this num version, and this we will use integer class and there is parse method inside this one, and instead of this one we will convert string number value here, and of course we need to end our method. So I'm going to comment out these ones so that we understand what's happening. Now let's print out this value num version plus, for example, 32. So in order to show you that it's converted to a number, as you can see, when you add this 32, it becomes 456. So it has been safely converted. This is the second way. Also, we can convert this one to a double number as well. Also, double class has also let's create a number. Let's call this one double version. So we will use double, also parse the string number, right? So we get the double version of this string number. So when we are using this one, let's give an example. For example, when we get the value from users, we can first of all give enter number. Let's call this enter your age. Instead of write line, we need to write method so that they align in the same line. So in order to get the value from the user, we will use console.readline. Console. Console.readline method. This will read the user input, but we need to assign to a variable name. So console readline returns string value, right? So returns next line of character from input stream, which means that it will return null, either a string value. So user input will be, let's call this one input, will be a string. Let's add some value to the string. Input plus, for example, this one. Let's see what happens. I'm going to explain 32. As you can see, because it is evaluated as a string, 32 holds this as string. When you concatenate a string to a number, the number is transformed into a string, so they are just added at the end of the string. So the number has been transformed into a string, which means 32. This is still a string, but what we should do if you want to do mathematical operation from the user input, we can transform this one to an integer, for example, because we are getting an age is an integer, so there is no need to use double here. So let's call this user age is equal to, let's use int parse method user input, right? In this case, now we are explicitly transforming one type to another. So let's console write line again. This time user age plus, I'm going to add 21 again. Let's see the difference. I'm going to add 32 again. As you can see in the first example here, because it is evaluate a string, it's written as like this. But the second case, because it's transformed into a number, and then 32 plus 21 is 53, and we get a string result. So this is an example where we can use this type int parse method or double parse method from transforming string into a number. Of course, the value should be a valid number. You cannot, for example, typecast for example, let's enter this one. We get an error because it cannot convert to a string of FDC, for example, into a number. So user input should be a valid number. How can we force the user to enter a valid number so that we can transform it? The method is very simple. Instead of using int parse, we can use try parse method. I'm going to have boolean value so that to check if the typecasting is okay. Int try parse method, and I'm going to use this input coming from the user and use out keyword and then transform into result. So what this one going to do is it will take user input as a string and try to make it to a number, integer number. If it can manage to do so, if the user input is a valid number, it will do this, and the boolean value will be a true value. If it cannot manage, it will be a false value. So that we can do like this. I'm going to explain if statement later. If type conversion is successful, and let's add the result is our result coming from the user data, result plus 21, right? As if it is not successful, if the compiler cannot convert one type to another string into an integer, let's console write line so that we can warn the user please enter a valid number. Let's try this. I'm going to enter my age, for example. Type conversion successful because I am entering a valid input, but sometimes user can enter mistakenly invalid data, for example, maybe misunderstanding your demand. Please enter a valid number. So we get no error because we are using try parse method. So we try if we can parse integer into string into an integer. If it is successful, so we say that type conversion is successful, and we add 21 to the result. If it is not, we are warning the user that please enter a valid number. So basically, typecasting in C# is really important and also an essential concept in C# that allows the conversion of one type to another, which we developers do is always Whether using implicit casting for safe automatic conversion or explicit casting for more controlled manual conversions, understanding how to use typecasting effectively will help you write robust and error-free C# code in your programming career. Thank thank for listening. I'm going to explain strings and string methods in the coming video.